Hey everyone, welcome to the presentation. My name is Lucas. I'm a former intern with Planting Justice, and I worked on the El Cervante farm in the summer of 2020 and did a lot of work trapping gophers. And I'm here to present some of that knowledge to you now. And yeah, this presentation will be on gophers and gopher IPM, integrated pest management, at the El Cervante farm. Part 1 will just be general information on gophers and trapping gophers. So, why they're a threat, general information such as their biology and habits and their psychology and behavior, a little bit on gopher tunnels and what they're like, and then some general information on how to do trapping. And part 2 will then zero in on basically how to complete an effective trapping session at the El Cervante farm using the most effective way that I believe there is. And here we got, that's an adult gopher right there. That's what they look like. That's what you're looking for. Okay, so part 1, the basics of gophers and gopher trapping. So yeah, what's the deal with gophers anyway? Gophers, yeah, so they are an important part of the ecosystem. They provide services and functions just like any other aspect of biodiversity. They, loosen up soil, they can speed plant decomposition, and, they're also a food source for other predators. In our case, they're considered a pest because they can kill trees and plants by eating the roots. And yeah, again, you can have a look at those teeth, and you can tell they can actually do extremely strong jaws. They can do a lot of damage to roots. And here's an example, a picture I found from some gopher damage, no gopher activity, gopher activity. So yeah, they can really, just destroy a tree or plant. So that's why we want to, trap them and reduce their population. And yeah, so we have to rely on non-chemical methods to do this, such as trapping and the use of biodiversity, like other species that prey on them. Because we're an organic farm, so that's what we're working with. And yeah, our goal is it's not to kill all the gophers because that would not be possible or desirable, but just to basically trap and kill enough to slow down the population growth and keep it in balance with the rest of our agroecosystem as we would like it to be for our purposes. So yeah, how do gophers think and act? What are some important facts you'll need to know about gophers? So we're looking at the pocket gopher, and there's many different subspecies of the pocket gopher, and they all look kind of different, but in our case, this is kind of what they look like. This might be a little bit big. I think the ones on the Planting Justice farm are a little bit smaller, but you can tell that's, they look similar to this. And so yeah, they're solitary and they're very territorial. So, and they can have very high ranges of like their own territory. But I think on the Planting Justice farm is generally, I haven't really caught many gophers within like 10 to 15 feet of each other. So I would say that that's kind of their radius of space, maybe a little less. Yeah, and so they're very territorial, except in the case when they come together to reproduce. And female gophers give birth twice a year to a litter of like 3 to 4, and that's with like a 3-week gestation period. And it takes about 5 weeks for those gophers to reach maturity. So, yeah, there's a ton of gophers on the farm. They reproduce quickly. There's a lot. So the battle never really ends. There's always kind of more work to do, and like I said, the most we can do is kind of slow the population and hopefully, save enough trees and keep them alive until they reach maturity, so they're a little more resilient on their own. And yeah, gophers have they mostly remain in their burrows. You won't really see them outside of their burrows in their tunnel systems, except when they kind of like pop their head out to investigate or get a snack or dig a new extend their tunnel system. But yeah, you'll mainly you only see like their activity, the evidence of their activity, rather than them themselves. And some are smarter than others. They definitely, catch on to human activity. They can be very suspicious, and some have seemed to, learn and are harder to catch than others. They respond to light, and as we'll see in other tunnel system, they, um, yeah, and as we'll talk about, they can, you can use light to your advantage. They have a very powerful bite and an extremely powerful tunneling capacity. And yeah, they can build tunnels and dig through dirt very quickly. And that's why the mounds are key, as we'll get into it later. But those are some of the mounds, and that's what you'll mainly be looking for spotting gophers. Cool. So now I will say a little bit about what the gopher tunnels are like, because this is important for catching them. So yeah, what are gopher tunnels like? Their tunnel system, which you can see kind of demonstrated over here in this little illustration, they tend to run, in different ways, but where you'll be trapping where you'll be catching them is on this kind of like lateral run, which runs parallel to the surface, which is generally between 6 to 12 inches beneath the surface. And the diameter of these tunnels are between 2 to 4 inches, but that's going to vary on like the size and maturity of the gopher. The total burrows can cover between 200 and 2,000 square feet, which is pretty huge. But again, I think it's a little bit more densely populated on our farm, so maybe not that big. They have deeper hole nesting and food storage chambers that are larger and deeper down here, but you won't be trapping in those as much. But it's good to feel around for them. And yeah, gophers form these mounds as they dig through the soil and like push up dirt to make space in there, and that's where you'll see like these mounds around the farm, and that's how you know where to trap. But we'll get into that later. So yeah, this is kind of like what the system looks like, and they also have like these escape holes in case a predator gets in there, and those are also where you'll often hear them kind of rustling, and they're popping in and out of there, and checking out the scene, seeing if there's any like hawks or whatnot, or maybe humans too, because they do catch on to us. And yeah, they'll often pop out of there, grab a snack, and pull it back in. And you'll want to always be listening for that activity. It's often like a little rustling. And yeah, and you'll also want to be checking for holes that have been plugged up, because that's how you'll know that they're still in use. Okay, so next section, yeah, how do you trap a gopher? So the first thing that you're gonna want to do in this case, when you're trapping gophers, is to identify where they might be, because we know they're out there, they're all over, but we're not just gonna randomly drop traps. We want to drop them where we're confident that there's a burrow and a tunnel system. So there's two things you can do. You can look for trees that seem like they're under attack. Like here's a picture of a tree that's looking pretty unhealthy. It has dried out leaves, and which means it could be not getting enough water. and there's high likelihood that gopher is eating the roots. Next, you could look for fresh mounds, and this is what a gopher mound looks like. And you can see it has this kind of crescent or like fan shape, which is actually how you distinguish a gopher mound from a mole mound, because the mole mound will be more, circular. And oftentimes gopher mounds, they occur in like these clusters, and it's kind of hard to tell if there's a fan shape or not. But there'll be like whole clusters of like mounds of like dirt together, and yeah. So you're going to want to identify the mounds, and then you will need to find the tunnels, which I will get into in the next section. But yeah, and yeah, the more traps you set, the better. And often, unless you're really sure that a tree is being damaged and you want to save that tree, it's what's worth spending more time on. But yeah, the more traps you can set, the more likelihood, just efficiency-wise, you'll catch more. Okay, so gopher trapping continued. How do you actually set a trap once you are confident there's gopher activity? So one type of trap is called the Maccabee style, which is a little bit older. And as you can see here, this is a picture of it, and it involves basically once a gopher kind of hits this lever right here, it causes these two spikes to close in and sadly kill the gopher that way. And these are going to be laid flat on the bottom of the tunnel right there. Here's a picture of it. So what you do is, the first thing you want to do is identify where the tunnel is, and you're going to use a poking device intended for this purpose. Here's a picture of someone doing it, and we have these exact ones on the farm. And what you'll do is you'll poke around through the ground until you feel a sudden drop. And what that drop is you basically hitting the tunnel right there. So here's a picture of a tool running through and hitting the tunnel. Sometimes it'll just be loose soil and not actually a tunnel. But in the case of the Maccabee, you're going to want to dig out the ground anyways to access the tunnel. So what you'll do is you'll get a shovel and you'll dig down in and dig out the tunnel so you can access both directions of it. And then you will place the Maccabee in the tunnel just like this, going both ways. And yeah, they should be facing the direction that the gopher is going to be coming. So if the gopher is coming from this way, it's going to hit the lever over here and vice versa. And yeah, you're going to want to have these connected to something. Here's a picture of like a wire that's been connected to a stake. What we usually do is just like, if you see this, we have these metal flags, marking flags, and the wires, the wiry flagpole fits pretty nicely into the bottom here, so you can kind of bend it around the end piece and just drag it out, and that works pretty well. And also, you will want to cover up the top of the tunnel that you've dug out, so that so that you want the gopher to be a little bit suspicious, so some light will be coming through. Like I said, they're sensitive to light, so they'll think something's up and they'll head in this direction, but you don't want there to be like so much light coming through, that they're just like, what's going on over there? Something must be digging out my hole. You want them to basically, be like, okay, something's going on over there. I should probably go investigate and maybe plug that hole up, because again, this is how they think. And then when they do that, they'll come over here and if they're not suspicious of whatever this, or if they're too hasty, they'll just run right over this and they'll get trapped. So how do you set these traps? Yeah, I would probably advise having someone show you this in person, but it's pretty straightforward, and you can just pause on this image if you want to study this. But basically, all you're doing is just pushing down the centerpiece, and once you see it in person, it's very straightforward. But you just push down the centerpiece and kind of hook this little back piece over the top and fix the middle setting rod into the trip plate. And yeah, you can study this. The main thing is just be careful of your hands, because these things will stab your fingers. So yeah, that's pretty much it. These are most useful on like more flat areas, and because the El Cervante farm is on a hill, you're going to be using the Gopher hawks more, which we'll get to next. Okay, so yeah, gopher trapping continued. The other kind of trap you'll use, which you'll use more often, is called the Gopher hawk, and that is the brand name. And the first part of this process is the same. You're just going to dig in testing the ground for the tunnels, and once you have felt the sudden drop, in this case, what you will do is use this outer point right here, you can see, to push into the ground to create a hole which will be big enough to insert the trap, which is this device right here. You can also, besides using this, we also have like a shovel that's been like broken in half and like sharpened so that you can like use the shovel to push down, and that works pretty well too. You'll see it. But this also works too, this thing. And again, it won't be clear always if it is a tunnel, but with the Gopher hawks, unlike the Maccabees, this kind of takes more time, and you're only going to set a Maccabee if you're like sure you found the tunnel. This, it doesn't take as much time to set, so you just have to be fairly confident, and it's more like a numbers thing. Just the more the better. It's like it's like setting fish hooks or something like that. Just the more you get out there, the better. And this is what it looks like when it's set. And when it goes off, you're going to see, as you can see here, this little yellow piece, which means that it's been set off. And you set it in the first place by putting it into the hole you've just made once you've created that hole, and then holding the this middle part while you pull it up and hold down on the top part here. And it's kind of hard to explain, so I'm just going to play a video in a second, but it should be upright and secure like this once it's placed in the ground. And what happens is, if you see this little metal piece right here, this little apparatus like fills the tunnel, and the gopher runs through it, hits this little metal piece in the center, which causes it to shut and sadly kind of asphyxiate the gopher. And when it works, it usually kills the gopher instantaneously, as it does with the Maccabee. So yeah. Okay, yeah, that's kind of hard to explain without showing it, and so I'm just gonna
Gophers and moles can be a big problem. Trapping the pest cleanly and organically should be fast, simple, and effective. Introducing Gopher Hawk, a new approach in gopher trapping and removal, one for beginners to professionals. Gopher Hawk can be placed in the ground vertically without the use of a shovel. As with any trapping system, start by probing the affected area to find the active gopher run. Use the wedge to open the probe's hole. The wedge compresses the soil outward instead of digging it up, meaning no shovel and no mess. Once in place, pull upward on the outer sleeve to set the trigger. The trap is now primed and ready to catch the gopher. You always know when the trap has been triggered. The catch indicator sits above ground and can be spotted from a distance. As the trap is set, the trigger and snare is deployed into the tunnel, catching the pest as it passes through.
Yeah, there you have it. Okay, so yeah, there you have it. That's how to in conclusion on this section, that's how you set the traps. And it'll take a couple times, and you might need a demonstration. But yeah, so some other stuff to know about trapping gophers is that like I said earlier, they can be pretty smart, and they do catch on. I would say like nearly half of the gophers, uh, like will set off the traps. They won't fall for it, basically, in my experience. So what do you do when they that there's gopher activity, but the traps aren't working? This is either happening because they're avoiding the traps, or maybe they're just like not using that part of the tunnel. And oftentimes like they'll set off the trap by either like pushing some soil into it, or pushing some other kind of debris into it to get it to go off, or they'll just like they'll recognize something's weird over here, and they'll plug up that part of the tunnel. So before, like I've set Maccabee traps where like I set them and I'm really confident about it, and then I'll come back and like all of this area is filled in with dirt because like the gopher was like, uh, you know, I know something's up over here. I'm not gonna go near this thing. I'm just gonna put dirt. So whatever this thing is, I'm gonna just avoid it. And yeah. So what do you do in the case when that happens? You can try setting the same spot again. In like you can, for example, like if it's a gopher hawk, and it goes off, with nothing in it, you can just put it back in the same spot, or maybe like close by to it, and hope that it catches it that next time. Um, what you could also do is trace the tunnel out a little bit further and replace it somewhere else. So, for example, if you just first put it over here, um, try putting it somewhere else in like the same tunnel system, and you can trace it by like continuing to poke here, 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 and that with your poking device. That way, where it's gonna be. Um, where was I? Sorry. Yeah. You can also try a different trap. So if you used a Maccabee the first time, next time try a Gopher Hawk, or vice versa, and maybe that'll work differently the next time. And you could also just what I've had to do before is just give it some time. Like I've had it before where I've set a trap and the gopher, it goes off with nothing in it. The gopher set it off. And I've tried it again, didn't work, and then I waited for a while until hopefully like the gopher maybe lost its suspicion. Let the heat die down, I guess, and maybe try again later. Um, some other general information would include, some other tricks you can do. Um, make so what I've done before is I've set a trap, um, and then I set like a second hole nearby that would draw some light in. So if this was the trap, you could set a hole over here, a trap, and then like set another hole in over here, so light will come down through. And again, the gopher will be suspicious of the light, so it'll walk towards it and then walk through the trap. So that's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is what I tried before was placing like a root in the second hole, we often have radish roots that you can put in, and they'll see, okay, we got a snack over here. I'm gonna go get that, and then they'll walk. They'll be all excited about the snack, so they'll walk right through the trap. And you can also set a route on top of the Maccabee too, and they'll go walk on top of it and get, um, you know, taken care of. Um, yeah. Other information. I wouldn't set traps, more than 3 to 4 gopher hawks at like a single tree or in like a single area. That's probably enough, and keep them all like a few feet apart from each other. And yeah, watch out for like kicked up dirt. If you see like I said before, if you set a trap and you see kicked up like dirt and it looks differently from how it did before, then that means that the gopher is hanging around, and that's how you know that they're there. Also, look out for, yeah, make sure we have owls on the farm, or there were at least when I was there, and they will be helping you out as well, so you're not alone, and that's good too. Last piece of information for this section would be that oftentimes, at least with the gopher hawks traps, you will they will be caught live. Like they'll be caught by, like their arm is stuck in the trap, uh, or some other part of their body, and then they're still alive, and unfortunately, they'll have to be killed, and we have a way of doing that, and if you're not comfortable doing that, you can ask help from the staff, and who will know how to do that. And yeah, and here's a little picture of a large gopher. And yeah, that's pretty much all the information just on generally trapping gophers, information on gophers in general. Yeah, that will be useful to you when you're setting traps and looking for gopher activity. Yeah, and before we move on to the next part of the presentation, I just want to show this little video here so you can get a sense of how quickly and powerful they are at digging tunnels. Someone took this video here on YouTube. I know I like this video very much because I think they're obvious that whoever's taking it is kind of freaking out the gopher. That's why they dig the tunnel, but nonetheless, how powerful. That's how mounds will pop up so quickly, and yeah, and that's these are what the mountains are going to look like too, and what you'll be looking for is like fresh, you call it gopher tilt. It's like really, it's going to be like fresh and more warm and moist, and also fine too. Just other kinds of soil. Yeah. So yeah, moving on then to part 2 of the presentation. Spend a few minutes talking about doing a trapping operation on the El Sobrante farm, which you can get a picture of right there, which you already know because you're working there. Yeah, there's different ways to trap. Here is an aerial photo of the farm. This is the field 1, which is divided by this little road here, and then field 2. This is, up here is where all the figs are, and the pomegranates, and plums down here, of course, on the lower rows. And then over up here, you have the pear trees and cherries and peaches in the middle, and apples down here on the bottom, different varieties. And when I first started, I was just kind of like doing it by section. I was like, oh, the figs aren't doing well, so we'll trap over here, and then come down and hit the peaches and the pomegranates, and then kind of over here. And you can do that, and it's really it's more going to be up to the staff, of course. But this is the system that I kind of came up with after 12 weeks of doing this that I found was kind of most effective, and I thought made the most sense efficiency wise. Yeah, here it is. It's called the stomp out system, and it's yeah, I'll explain that now. So step one will be to start on either one of these fields and do the whole field, and you can pick which one probably needs more attention first, I guess would be where to start. And what you want to do first is basically go around and stomp out all of the pre-existing gopher mounds. Yeah, the reason you're going to do this is because it'll allow you to, in a few days, identify all of the new ones, because, they're, like we just saw, digging mounds and tunnels constantly. That's all they do. They eat and they expand their tunnel system, and there's always digging. And yeah, there's always new mounds, so it's still, you're going to be doing other work too, so it's best just to start fresh, and you're going to want to look for where the new mounds pop up. So the first thing to do is to stomp out all of the old mounds, or what might be a mound. So walk around the whole field, top to bottom, and just stomp out the mounds using your foot or use a hoe, and just make it so it's just flat, and that you know that that's an old one. And and you can, if there's you're gonna get into areas in the grass, especially, where there's here's a picture of mounds in the grass. Sometimes there's a lot of dirt just in the grass, because it's just from tillage and so on, and it's not going to be totally clear if it's a mound or not. So you can just mark it some way with a flag or something, yeah, where it's unclear, so you know that that's where you had stomped out, so you're not confused when you check for new mounds. Yeah, look under the grass areas too. So yeah, so in these areas, this is the farm. In between, in these grassy areas, there's all kinds of mounds underneath the bed of grass. So move that around, check that out too. That's an important place to trap, because gopher tunnels, are running all through here, and yeah. Yeah, yeah, it shouldn't take more than hour and a half or so to go through here and really thoroughly stamp out all the mounds. And this is in field one. Make sure you look, in thick areas, there's, I think that's a pomegranate tree right there. Look underneath the base too, and look underneath, the close-up areas where it's kind of covered, and make sure there's no mounds down there. So yeah, then wait 2 to 3 days. Give time for gopher activity to generate new mounds, and then that's how you're gonna know where they are. And yeah, here's a picture of a mound in the grass. You can tell that's pretty fine tilth right there. That's a place where you would want to set a trap, because that's gopher obviously dug that up, and yeah, again, you're looking for tilth that is fresh and moist, and if it's dry and brittle, it's probably an old old mound, or it came from someone just hoeing around over there doing agricultural work. So step 2 of this process would be to in the 2 to 3 days that you're waiting for new gopher activity to pop up, and then you can turn your attention to the trees. Check the trees to see, yeah, if which trees look like they need attention. And because that's another way, like I said before, that you're going to know that there's gopher activity. And the main point of this is to protect the trees. So go look at the trees and look for signs that they might be under siege. Those signs would be, signs of dehydration, like browning or weak, kind of brittle leaves, or just general poor health. And then especially if it's a younger tree, shake like the root right there. And if it's not firm, and stable in the soil, then chances are that like the roots beneath are being eaten up, and then it's weakening the tree structure. And then also just ask staff who've been working around like what they've seen, because everyone should always kind of be keeping an eye out, because really like this is the main product, and trapping the gophers is essential. So it's kind of like everyone's job to keep an eye out and make sure that they're the product is safe. Yeah, and then consult staff if you're unsure if a tree is under a gopher attack. And yeah, here's a picture of some of the younger pear trees in field 2. So walk around and give the base a good shake and so on. And you can start setting traps there in the meantime while you. Step 3 of this process will be to, after you've waited a few days, go around and mark the new gopher mounds that have popped up. Again, look for, you'll know that they're new because you've already stomped out the old ones, and you'll see new mounds in places that there weren't before. And this whole time you'll be having a sense, you'll learn the land, and you'll start to spend a lot of time out there, and you'll become very familiar, and you'll have been in an area, and you'll be like, okay, I didn't see that yesterday, so that must be new. But yeah, look for a moist, fine tilth in a crescent shape, like I said before. And then what you do, or what I would do in this system, is to put a flag in. So first go around and just put in flags to mark the new mounds. And I would say put in like 2 flags together, where there's like a mound where it's going to be hard to tell sometimes, but if there's like a mound where you're like, okay, I know for sure this was not here the other day, and this is a gopher mound, put 2 flags in, so that way you'll know, okay, it's highly likely, I'm going to prioritize this. If you get like another area where you're like, I'm not sure if that, that looks like something was going on there, I'll just put in 1 flag, and I'll get back to that if I have time, because it takes a lot of time to do, and you're going to be doing other stuff too. And yeah, make sure to pay attention underneath in like the grassy areas and underneath like thick areas and like the trees where it's kind of hard to see. And yeah, look underneath these grasses, because that's where you'll see new activity as well. And again, that's important because these tunnels are running all through here. Okay, oh, sorry, delay there. Okay, so next, step 4 would be to, after you've gone around the whole field from top to bottom and marked all the new mounds according to the confidence level, step 4 is to set the new traps in the new mounds. So set gopher hawks like this right here. That's one I set. Based on how I instructed on how to do it in part 1. And yeah, Maccabees are generally Maccabee traps are generally like a second option if it's not working, or Maccabees, in this case, more come into handy more come in handy if like it's like kind of like if you've hit like a flat area, or if a trap is like more directly like open and accessible, or if it's like a really big tunnel, um, it's easier and faster to set Gopher hawks, and yeah, Maccabees can come in handy, like if it's as like a second option if that's not really working out, and if you've really like laid out the tunnel and have identified it. But this is just generally easier, especially because it's like a slant. So start off with the mounds that are you're more confident in, because you might not have enough time to depending on what else you're doing, to hit everything else. So you might only be able to set a certain amount of traps given like your time frame. So just start with like the ones that you're really confident about, and then yeah, leave the flags in according to like your confidence level. So if it's like you set a trap and you're pretty sure that there's new activity there, leave like the 2 blue flags in there, and that way you'll know, okay, that one I was pretty sure about. Um, and then, yeah, track the areas as the traps start going off over the next few days. So if you make a catch, then mark that area to communicate that you caught one there. And I would say like put in like a single red flag, for example, which could mean you're going to want to, you can work this, what each flag or means for yourself, but like set in like a single red flag to show, okay, this was caught here, so I know this was there. Or, which will likely happen, as I said, if a trap goes off without a catch, then mark that area with like 2 flags so you know that there's confirmed activity there and you can come back there later on. And prioritize the areas around like higher risk trees. So like over here is a lot of younger pear trees. So if you're limited on time, start here. Start trapping all around here, because even if the trap or the mound isn't directly close to a tree, it will link up eventually, or it probably already is. So yeah, spend time around the areas that are most important. Um, what else? Yeah, just set as many traps as possible. That's the beauty of this stomping out system, is that you just, it suddenly a lot of new mounds will pop up and there'll be a lot of new opportunities to catch. So just drop in as many as possible. And it's a lot better than just like kind of randomly putting them around just, trees. Because, it gives you more confidence that there actually is something there. Okay, and now on to our final section to conclude on finishing the job and just some other general thoughts. So once the new mounds have been trap set, just continue checking trees until traps start going off, and you'll probably be doing other stuff at this time too. So yeah, you'll be kind of alternating in between, uh, you know, monitoring the traps that have been set at the new mounds, and just like going back to other trees and setting there as well. And just in general, overall, like this may take up to like 1 to 2 weeks depending on what you're doing. And once all traps have been set at both, trees under siege and new mounds, you'll just spend, a few days working the whole field, watching for activity and resetting traps as they go off. And like I said earlier, they'll go off and there won't be anything in it, so you'll have to reset and kind of do like a back and forth with the Gopher. Um, Use Maccabees when it's appropriate. Leave a flag where you caught a Gopher. Like I would say, use like a single, like green flag, for example, something different from what you've already been using, just to note where you've caught one, for the future, for next time. And remember, you won't get all of them, but as long as you can save the most at-risk trees and catch enough to reduce and slow the population, that's enough, because the battle never ends. And you can move on to, once you've completed the first field, you can move on to the next field and do the same thing over there. And probably by the time you're done with that, it'll be time to come back over here and do it again, depending on what else you're doing, of course, on the farm. And yeah, and don't forget, you're not alone. You have owls. When I was there at the end of the summer in 2020, owls just started appearing, and here are some boxes where they hang out in. And yeah, that's a good sign, and they'll probably catch a lot of gophers. So yeah, that's the stomp out system. I think it works really efficiently, and again, I think it's better than just kind of like going around haphazardly, just randomly putting them in wherever, hoping to catch something. It's just being as strategic as possible. So in conclusion, for the whole presentation, gophers are an important part of the ecosystem, and they can be kept in balance for our purposes. But I think it's important to, especially because this is an organic farm and we're trying to, work under agroecological principles here. It's important to be mindful of them as, a rightful part of the ecosystem and not like a kind of just extraneous thing that needs to be stomped out and eliminated, which is how it's often treated in a lot of more industrial type farms. They're part of the ecosystem, and they're can be kept in balance just like everything else. And effort is never over. Just save as many trees as possible. And yeah, once you'll be out there for a while, you'll just learn to kind of always keep your eyes and ears open, listening for activity, seeing activity, paying close attention, and just using the tools and the systems you have, and just know the land. You'll become part of it, and you'll learn to kind of think like the gopher, think what they would do in this case, and kind of come to know them in a way, and know your surroundings. Just pay close attention, and one day again, like you'll be over in the figs, and you'll be like, okay, I was here the day, I didn't see this here, something's up, something's going on. Just being very in tune, I guess, is the point. And of course, respect your enemy. They are a worthy adversary. Look at those teeth. I mean, come on. But yeah, like I said, I wouldn't look at them as an enemy, just part of nature and something to work with. And here are some useful links. You can, if you have, you'll probably have this PowerPoint file, so you can just click on these links and go to these websites. And that's it, the end. Good luck out there, and if you have any questions, didn't really show up here, but my email is lmeyer@berkeley.edu. You can always feel free to email me with any questions, and of course the staff are very knowledgeable about all this stuff. So yeah, good luck and thank you.